Hi folks, Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In, in this essay, I'd like to just take a look at the WhatsApp releases, the message releases between the people in the British political and what we call public service establishment, talking about how they're going to go about deceiving the British public over the COVID stuff. Now, they openly, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but they openly talk about methods to ramp up the fear claims and statements and utterances and assertions they can make, which will scare the public, regardless of the medical reality or the scientific reality. So you've got these people that make a decision on how they're going to deceive the public, and then there's a few in particular that straight-faced, bald-faced liars then appear making a public statement or appear on the media interview circuit with an absolute straight face saying, we are following the science. The science says. The scientists have said, the experts have said, we're only doing what it's not us, it's them, the experts have said so, the scientific experts. Are you a scientific expert, Joe Public, you damn fucking dumbass Nancy? So there was a conspiracy, let's call it what it is, a conspiracy amongst the ruling elite to deceive the public, to control the public, to put panic through the public, to get the public to behave a certain way, even though there was no scientific support or reason or basis for it. It was simply an exercise of mass crowd control and mass deception. And it's hard to believe that many people would go along with it and would consider it. And they're approaching it with zeal and intensity. Can we deceive them today? What can we say to deceive them? We are the morally superior ones. They are the great unwashed. We decide. And this is very much like the communist, socialist places were during the Cold War and even since. North Korea today is an example, but this idea that we're not beholden to anything at all. We're creating a socialist revolution, a fucking nirvana. We're creating this socialist paradise, and we're allowed to do anything, tell any lie, make any untruth, kill anyone, do anything we want in pursuit of that objective. And that appears to be the underwriting and underlying attitude of this people. We can say and do whatever we want. We are the ones who are taking us to this nirvana or taking it wherever. And those people have no right. They have no voice. They have no seat at the table here. We can tell them whatever we want in order to get the outcome that we want. And this is breathtakingly scary. Now, in a communist dictatorship where there's no rule of law and no due legal process, you go, oh, well, that's kind of a price you pay. But we're not talking about that here. We're talking about a supposed democracy, representative democracy. We're talking about the people's elected representatives acting in direct contradiction to the well-being and the welfare of the people they're supposed to be representing. I don't think we've ever had that before in the West. That in itself is a very much the globalist shtick, by the way. But I don't think we've seen that before in history, have we? Our own representatives, supposedly elected, acting in directly contrary to the interests of the citizens that they're supposed to represent. Now, this is all across the Western world. Wherever the globalists are in control, which is all across the Western world, this is what's happening, whether it be in the United States or Britain or Australia or anywhere. But it's not that I doubted this or that I was shocked by it. The extent of it maybe was a little bit, oh, gee whiz, I didn't think they'd have gone that far. They weren't reps. Well, Dr. Scientist so-and-so has done an analysis on this COVID strain, and that's been peer reviewed by and I am concerned about this. I think that I'm concerned about how many the suffering that the people would endure if we did so and so. Maybe we could do, and there's no discussions like that. It's like, who gives a fuck about the facts? We're into manipulation. How many lies can we tell and get away with it? Now, the only thing that I saw was of any hesitation was that they could overplay their hand in one area, which would then compromise their ability to tell lies in another. There was that, and one, I think it might have been Boris Johnson saying, let's all be on the same page before I go out and make a public announcement. So it reduces or minimises the chance of us having to make a U-turn tomorrow or the next day or whatever, because it makes us look, it unavoidably makes us look silly. And so he didn't want to do that. So he was counselling, well, should we wait a day or let's make sure we're on the same page before we go public with this? But I didn't see any signs of restraint. It was, what lies can we get away with? Now, I was on the student council at high school, and it was one of those things that the council where you get somebody nominates you, somebody seconds you, and then you have to actually refuse to serve on the council. Otherwise, you automatically then a candidate. I didn't think, some people lobbied quite hard, and I didn't think I'd get the votes. But I got I ended up getting enough votes. Fuck knows how. Again, I didn't seek the position or go chasing it, but and so I went to some of the council meetings, and these we're all, I don't know, 16 or something at the time, and so the type of discussion, the type of sort of patter and to and fro, and the silliness that 16-year-olds have, because we were part of the student council, we thought we were momentary demigods and that sort of thing, and some people got quite carried away with it. Even at that age, 16, I was a little concerned about this demigod thing. And being even then an avid student of history, I sort of, well, hold on a minute, this is getting a bit Robespierre here, that sort of pattern exchange and how we communicated and the back and forth. It was the same as you see the WhatsApp messages going back and forth between the British politicians, their advisors, senior public servants, and so on. That sort of back and forth patter, but that the belief that we can tell any lie, we're totally not accountable. The people that would hold us to account are moral inferiors by country miles, and therefore we're not accountable, and whatever we do is the work and the actions of the morally superior ones who are not accountable. The media are on our side, so we don't have to worry about them. And they talk about things like right-wing newspapers. Now, anyone who disagrees with the whole COVID thing is, and this is very much the view that a conservative, a centre-right government has, that anyone disagrees with, or even questions, you don't disagree, just questions it, or ask difficult and embarrassing questions, they're right wing, they're fucking white supremacists, they're Nazi, they're fascist, they're Hitler. Now, again, this is a centre-right government running around talking about anyone that disagrees with them or questions them or asks the question is a fucking fascist. I mean, who would imagine this sort of scenario, which again demonstrates that, given that's the globalist position, you question globalization, you're fucking Hitler. And so clearly these people are globalist owned, and that comes across. I also want to talk a bit about how these people do not believe they're part of the society that they live in. This is sort of quite astonishing turn of events. You can't have imagined it would be the case 30 years ago. But the cost of living and the cost of living in a nice area, and how mass migration has turned otherwise, working class and lower middle class areas into hellhole shitscapes, because these people that are in support of mass migration, they don't want to be anywhere near it. And again, I've spoken to many people that well-to-do people, they're living in their $5 million houses. They talk, mass migration, fantastic, wonderful. But whenever it comes to Well, I don't want to live near those, all those people coming from other countries. I don't want to live near those Muslims. I don't want to live near those Africans, and so on. I don't want my daughter being anywhere near those, and so on and so forth. So as long as they're far away from it, when their wealth buffers them from having to deal with the day-to-day issues of the mass migration that they so actively support, they're only in support of it as long as it doesn't affect them. The minute that mass migration affects them or their family members, then suddenly it's, oh well, there should be controls, oh there should be limits, and suddenly their tone changes. And but while they're living the lifestyle they've got, they don't really have to worry about it. And this is a very critical factor. Those who support mass migration, unless they're directly making money out of it, those who support mass migration are immune from its effects, and that's universal. Now, coming back to the sort of people that if I look at all the people, certainly that I've been able to, had the time or the inclination to look into their background here. So I look at one quite childlike again, the 16-year-old on a student council. They behave and act like children, these fucking people, and they're supposed to be represented because they've never had to accept responsibility for their behaviour or be responsible and actually earn a real living in the world, in the wide world. They've stayed children. They've stayed 16-year-olds in the student council. Girls are even worse, but these were nearly all men. I was a couple of women, but nearly all men, and white men too, by the way, and straight white men at that. We're being sold out in the West by primarily straight white men, but not all of them are Jews. For they're Gentiles in certainly in this group in the COVID stuff anyway. So I was having a look at the background here. Now, there's one guy who comes from I don't know, middle of the middle class sort of surrounding environment. Still needs quite a bit of dental work. So clearly he came from a household that couldn't afford the dentist bills. But or as the Americans refer to it, he's got English teeth. But always the Swedes say anyone that's got really good, well-spaced teeth. In Sweden, they say they look. I looked at my teeth and they said, "You've got American teeth." I said, "What are you talking about, American teeth?" Well, your dentition is so good that that's what we call American teeth. And, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So looking at this guy in particular, now he's a major player in the propaganda pushing, and one of the most active in just tell the public any lie, and it's acceptable. Any untruth, any deception is acceptable. We're here to take control of these damn unwashed fucking fascists. These are the people that voted for breakfast. They're Brexit. They're fucking fascists. They're Nazis. They're Hitler. So we can tell them, we can treat them with any level of contempt that we choose. Now, this guy's hardly come from a wealthy family. So he's starting to move up the ranks. He's one of these poster child the globalists have identified. He'll be useful, and so he starts to move up the ranks and gets more senior political posts. And he reaches a certain level, and then he gets together with he marries a lady who's again I rate her as lower middle class. Probably a better looking woman than you think a guy like him could score. And he's got this really dorky sort of, teenager walk and so on. He's not a particularly impressive guy. Doesn't seem too bright either. So I'm surprised he reached that level. But then again, that proves that he's a global, it illustrates the great likelihood he's a globalist flunky. It's people they can control and use. Anyone capable of independent thought's useless to them. So he marries this lady. Then, almost a day after they get married, she suddenly gets a job way above her capacity. She then gets this job in a multinational organisation that's completely owned and controlled by one of these originally an internet startup type thing. Is one of these companies that's controlled by the big finances in Wall Street. Suddenly, she's given like a $2.5 million a year job. At this in this multinational firm. Now she says, no way, she's qualified for this. She was like a junior flunky accountant somewhere, and then she's now she's now the deputy CEO of this multinational firm. And she's not even, she's a million miles away from having the credentials for that sort of job. But suddenly she gets this very, very well paid job. And at the same time, they're able to make some incredibly canny real estate deals. Again, these people who know nothing about real estate or nothing about anything, they're fucking children, and yet suddenly they're able to discover these real estate, buying real estate at an incredibly good price, and then a year later selling it at this absolute massive profit. That nobody makes these sorts of profits on real estate deals, but somehow these people did, and there's no parliamentary investigation committee or anything like that. So they've gone from being worth nothing, and in over a space of a few years, they're worth over $10 million. Now that $10 million isn't rich, but these are people again that would live in some shitbox in outer suburbia. These aren't people that would achieve anything or go anywhere, in their own right. So these are the sort of people that are the key enablers and the key liars. It's the illiterate girl from the middle of nowhere in the United States that gets discovered in Hollywood or something, that she's now a star, and it's that same sort of thing. These are people that, now the guy is now he'd be, I don't know, mid 40s or something like that, early 40s. But he still talks, and his messages and his behaviour, he still acts like a child, as indeed do some of the government ministers. Some of the biggest liars there, the ones who can just go out front of the cameras and tell the most brazen bald-faced lies, they are the most childish. They have the least concept of responsibility and accountability, and any sort of, they talk about moral requirements. Now, morally, I think we all wince. Well, many of us, not all of us, clearly not them. We wince when we tell lies, even as little white lies. And when I don't know, your kid brings this terrible painting to you where you've got no idea what it is. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, yes, you can get those sort of white lies thing. But they can go out in these brazen, bald-faced lies in the camera, telling the most hideous untruths, and yet they don't have the slightest conscience pangs about it. They can go straight from fronting the cameras and telling these terrible lies to going off and humping their mistress in the next room. It's that sort of sanity. Now, it's not simply a matter of being drunk on power, by the way. Drunk on power is one thing, but to be able to tell that many lies, premeditate them, to get there with a whole bunch of what lies will we tell today, what deceptions will we employ today, that sort of thing. That's quite astonishing. It's quite remarkable. It's people who've gone beyond. I mean, they've become absolute sociopaths on steroids, and they don't care. They don't even believe that they are. They're morally so superior to the rest of us, and the rest are so inferior that the idea that any sort of rules would apply to them is unthinkable in itself. And I just want the same people who were pushing the same COVID lies in Australia, and clearly it was the international globalist cabal script. So we need recognise that all the way along. And it's simply who would they get to tell the lies in each country, and how would they justify it under local circumstances and conditions, and what variants would they claim existed, and so on. And there was a lot of very brazen lying in Australia. But looking at the sort of people that do it, here's another one. Here's a pretty simple sort of. She's a working class lady that's got into Parliament, and she's been given some quite senior roles in the political establishment now. If her IQ is even 100, I'd be surprised. But they use her for communicating to low IQ women. She's a good conduit for propaganda to that class of people, and that electorate. That's her job to it's the equivalent of electing a quadriplegic because they're good at communicating to other quadriplegics. It was that, the wavelength sort of thing. So they use them just as stooge flunkies. So she gets that, but they also want these people to be looked after. And once these people get into these sort of jobs and get a taste of power, so they want to live the sort of life that people with money live. Now, certainly in Sydney, if you want to live, and I mentioned this in other videos, if you want to live in a nice sort of heading towards the upper end of the middle class, nice area, the tree-lined street and the good schools and that sort of stuff, that the entry level to that sort of lifestyle is $3 million Australian, or say 2.2 million US. If you don't have that sort of money, you're just simply not a player. But then you have to have the weekend place up the mountains and that sort of stuff. So you actually need a lot of money to live that sort of lifestyle. Now, from their own income, there's only one in every few hundred or several hundred people can actually afford that lifestyle from their own income. That doesn't include things like, I don't know, inheriting well, or I don't know, winning the lottery or something. But if you want to do it from your own income, then there's very few that can afford it. So the globalists sort of know this and say, well, we'll give you that sort of lifestyle, but you have to do what we want. And so here's this lady in the political establishment. Again, she'd be a fucking receptionist somewhere, or some junior administration clerk in the real world. But now she's got, they prime her and give her lines to read into the camera, and so she's a useful fool for the globalist requirements. But again, the politicians don't get paid a lot of money. She can't get the sort of money that would give her that sort of lifestyle. So they put her on committees and they do this and they do that. But still, her income would be, all packaged up about $400,000 a year, which is nowhere near enough to live that sort of lifestyle. So her husband, who's he's actually an ex-con. He did time in prison. Who's again no genius. They give him a $500,000 a year job. Just magically, he's gifted this job, way beyond his capacity to get that job on merit, and he's given that. So their combined income is, 900,000 plus a year, with all the trips and the benefits and the the whatnot thrown in. They're probably pushing $1 million. So that's the sort of income you need to get ahead in a place like Sydney these days. So that's how they look after their globalist flunky goons and enablers and hangers on. In return, they get some pretty simple people. They're not just drunk on power, but actually believe that they have the right to deceive their moral inferiors. Now, whether or not you believe people are morally, we all probably fall into that trap in some way or other, but whether you believe people are morally inferior or not, I for one believe that their vote has value and should have value, and that because the people in Parliament are the representatives of the people. I believe in that, and that everyone should be treated equally under the law, and due legal process should be rigorously applied in all legal cases and so on. And that if you're going to do anything, it has to be with the approval of the people. So if you want to bring in masses of brown and black peasants into you have to go and have a referendum and ask the people, that sort of thing. So I believe in those. Now, if we had those things as functioning, the globalist class could not have enacted their takeover of the Western world. So clearly that's why the globalists don't want those things. It gets in the way of their control and grab for power. But just looking again, coming back to these WhatsApp messages in Britain, it just shows the extent to which the elites have abandoned the Western populace. That what's going on in Britain I believe went on in every Western country. Again, globalist scripted, but that's the barefaced illustration of just how bad it is and how much we have been abandoned, and the sneering contempt these self-appointed elites have for their fellow citizens. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.